does he do? He might go all the way. He gives it a ride. It's a chance. It'll be a goal. Beauty, buddy. Wants me rolling through. He can. Cometh the moment. Cometh the champion.
A great first half doesn't make a four-quarter performance. Longmire lamented it, the players lamented it, and the SCG is just no longer the fortress it once was. One win from our last 7 games, one more loss, and that's our worst run of form since 1994. With games against Richmond, the GWS Giants, Hawthorn, Essendon, Brisbane and Geelong to come, it's not looking great before the bye. You are listening to the Swans Blog SwansCast, the #1 Sydney Swans fans podcast. In this week's episode, we review the Swans' 4th round loss against Melbourne on Thursday night. We talk about the midfield performance, that third quarter, Harry Cunningham's great performance, introduce a new segment and give you our Monday champions and villains. I'm Justin Mitchell and with me is SwansCast regular Joshua Marr. Top of the agenda for today's show, the SCG record. We've just won 1 from our last 7 matches, and that equals our round 4-11 record in 2000. We have 4 consecutive losses at the SCG, and that also equals the same period. And, Josh, if we've got one more loss, we are looking at our worst record since 1994. So,
wow, that's impressive for all the wrong reasons.
Unfortunately, yeah. So, you watched the game, you were in a pub. We had our SwansCast live on Saturday, so if you haven't seen that yet, make sure you go watch that because we discuss off-field issues. That's why we're not going to delve into that. But you were at a pub on Saturday watching it. You said you watched it again on Sunday. It wasn't pretty viewing in the second half, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was downright disheartening. The second half, just the lack of intensity and effort again, which seems to be a recurring theme for us the last couple of years, just was very un-Swans-like. That's not Swans football.
No, and look, our SCG form has actually been quite terrible the last bit of, I'd say, season and a little bit. We, obviously, last time we played the Giants, we only scored 30 points and we lost by 7 goals against them in the elimination final last year. They are our next opponents as well.
And that was 2 goals in junk time as well. So
yeah.
I think at the time, if we had not have scored those 2 goals in junk time in the fourth quarter, we were looking at the worst score since 1899, is that correct?
Yes, 1899 is exactly right. I do remember hosting a podcast after the match, and the title of the podcast was "At least it isn't 1899 bad." And
that's right.
we say that because it would have been our lowest final score since 1899, and I think we only scored 18 that time as well. So yeah, it's not looking great. We'll skip straight into our champions and villains. So Monday champion Josh, let's hear yours.
My Monday champion is actually Harry Cunningham, but it's not just because of what Harry Cunningham did this week. It's because of what Harry Cunningham has done this year. I think Cunner's copped a bit of flack over the last few years. I think people expect a lot more out of a guy who's actually more of a bit player and a role player. He's not an outright superstar like your Kennedys or your Parkers or any of those players. But I'm just going to read out some stats for what Harry Cunningham's career averages look like, what his 2019 season stats look like. So his career average is 15 disposals, 8 kicks. His disposal efficiency is 79%, which is elite. His percentage by foot 74%, which is elite. He's got 1.5 rebound 50s, just on 4 marks, 2 intercept possessions, 3 tackles, and 200 metres gained average. So other than the 2 elite rankings there, the rest of them are pretty average or they're below average. But his 2019 stats are 22 disposals, 14 kicks. His disposal efficiency is 84%.
Wow.
And his disposal by foot is 85.5.
Wow, that's massive.
Massive. Both elite. Rebound 50s, 4.5, which is ranked elite. 6 marks. Intercept possessions, 4.5, which is ranked elite.
Wow.
4 tackles, and 402 metres
Wow.
gained per match. So Harry Cunningham's year has been massive.
He had a pretty big game as well. I think he had over 500 metres gained against the Demons as well. So he was enormous for us.
Huge. He's having a huge year, and I think this is the kind of year he was on track for when he had his syndesmosis injury. Syndesmosis. He had a Liz Frank injury either last season or the year before. So I'm hoping Harry Cunningham keeps this going.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. I think people are kind of expecting a bit of an Isaac Smith kind of player from him, or like Goods was when he was in his prime, able to just sprint down the wing. But he's a very different player. He's almost like a winger who can play as a tagger and can win his own inside ball as well.
And he's got a massive tank. He plays,
does, yeah.
I think he averages about 85% time on ground. He often plays more than that.
Yep.
He's got a massive tank, and he's one of the few guys we've got at the moment who is still going hard at the end of the game.
Yeah, exactly. He's a good player, and he's just gone over 100 games, and I think now he's going to enter into sort of like his really good period before he peaks in a couple of years' time. Now, my Monday champion, it's kind of two, but it's 2 into 1. It's St Kilda / Alan Richardson. Alan Richardson was under pressure before the season even started. St Kilda were looking at bringing in some really experienced sort of senior assistant coaches to help him, or at least transition him out. So they got Brett Ratton in St Kilda as well. So they're really looking like, what are we going to do in the next sort of 6 months? He has turned that club around. They are, I think they're 4th or 5th on the ladder at the moment, just by percentage. They pipped Hawthorn after coming from 4 goals down at 3/4 time, and they got over the line, and they were immense in that last quarter. They were absolutely fantastic. So, Alan Richardson, you have been great this year. And that meme from totally true AFL quote page on Facebook, where Dan Hanbury saying, "Oh, just look at the ladder, we're 2-0 and Swans are zip 2." That's kind of starting to ring a little bit true at the moment, Josh, isn't it?
It's a little bit prophetic. It was funny 2 weeks ago. I'm not laughing about that anymore.
No, it's actually a bit depressing. So I'm going to kick off our Monday villains. Now, this is also from a Sunday match. It is the Carlton Suns match, and there are 2 plays, and they are absolute disasters. It is Mitch McGovern's the ball travelling over his head and bouncing before the goal line, and anyone who watches Bounce would have heard Danny Frawley just going off on him in his Don't Come Monday segment. And then Carlton wins the centre clearance. They've got 15 seconds left. Mark Murphy has the ball about 45 metres out, and he tries a dribble goal from about 40 metres, ignoring the fact there are still 2 defenders in front of him. And he got absolutely nailed on the dribble file, and he deserved it because it was just an atrocious passage of play. So the Carlton boys, Mitch McGovern and Mark Murphy, they are my Monday villains.
Yeah, it's an absolute coach killer, that.
It is. And now, Joshua, who is your Monday villain?
Oh, my Monday villain is actually Patrick Dangerfield, and it's a little bit to do with his elbow into De Boer's chest. If anyone's seen the media the last couple of days, there's a bit of discussion about whether or not he's going to get the same treatment Dustin Martin got the week before. Basically, Matty De Boer's done a good job tagging Patrick Dangerfield during the game. Danger swung a blind elbow at De Boer and hit him in the sternum. De Boer's doubled over. And then Paddy's gone for another bit of a swing backwards, not knowing that De Boer's now doubled over and just hit him in the head. Look, I don't think it's in the same... Yeah, it's a bit funny, actually, if you see the footage. I don't think it's in the same category as the Dustin Martin one from the week before. But he's my villain because in his role as the AFLPA rep and just his general social media use, Paddy's a little bit chirpy about MRO decisions and things other players do. And if
he's
you're going to be chirpy...
vocal,
Yeah, if you're going to be chirpy and out in the public with this stuff, you can't be doing stuff like that on the field as well, Paddy. So you're my villain.
Well, he's certainly painted a target on his back, really, in the last 3 months. He's been very critical over the new rules, extremely critical over the contact below the knees. And he is in this unique position, being the president of the AFLPA, that he can say some of those things without getting in too much trouble. But I suspect this action, plus his latest sort of, I guess you could say, social transgressions, has brought in a lot of criticism, and I suspect that at the end of the year there's probably going to be a change in a leadership in the AFLPA, and I probably would say that's going to be for the better, because you can't do what you're doing. You can't be as critical and as vocal as he is and then just go on the field and do silly stuff.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it's not like he's a repeat offender for issues on field, but you still can't do it. You can't put yourself out in the public realm making the statements he does and then go and do silly things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Straight into the weekend review. As I said before, we did our Saturday sort of SwansCast Live, we talked a little bit about the weekend review. So we're going to sort of delve into it just briefly, not too much. So make sure you catch that episode. It is on Wooshka, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on YouTube, it's on all the usual channels. So go and make sure you listen to it because it is a great listen. We talk about the club and a lot of issues off the field, especially the training and facility situation, which is an absolute joke. But I'm going to kick things off, Josh. First quarter, we were immense. Unfortunately, Melbourne got the first 2 goals, a bit of a flicker one through Bruce, and then he kicked the next goal. They're up 2 goals, I think, to about a point or something like that, and then we finally hit the scoreboard, and we hit the scoreboard in great fashion. We're up 47 disposals, 7 inside 50s, 3 centre clearances despite Callum Sinclair basically limping around by that point. We had 3 centre clearances more than Melbourne, and that's despite the fact that Max Gawn was already monstering Callum Sinclair in the ruck. We had 11 more contested possessions, and we had 3 more contested marks. We were smashing them across the field, and we probably should have led by more than we did, and it really was quite disappointing to only really be up by, I guess, a smallish margin. But Heaney was dominant, had 10 disposals. Kieran Jack got a goal. Jones had 9 disposals and a goal, and Florent was right up there with Heaney. He was absolutely fantastic. So the first quarter was really good, Josh.
Yep, and probably the first half of the second quarter was even better, I think.
Yeah?
So by halftime, we were up by 48 disposals, 7 clearances, 4 centre clearances, 13 inside 50s. We had 5 more marks inside 50. We were up 11 contested possessions and 31 disposals. And Ollie Florent and Isaac Heaney combined for 7 clearances between the two of them.
That's crazy.
Well, it was a pretty solid half of football, and it didn't translate to a score on the scoreboard. I think our inaccuracy in front of the sticks cost us, and we really should have gone into the halftime break with a 5, 6, 7 goal lead, but we didn't.
Well, that was one thing the commentators were discussing on the broadcast, is that Swans should have been up by 40 points. And we're not talking half-time, we're talking halfway through the second quarter. I think we kicked 8 goals, but how many shots was it that we had on goal? I think we had a couple of dropped short and a couple went on the full.
Yeah, it was some. It was about, it was 22 shot, 22.
Wow, that's insane.
I think it was 22 shots on goal, yep.
Yeah, 8 goals and 22. That is some terrible conversion. And look, I remember watching it. Melbourne are just fluking it. They kicked 4 goals from the same pocket. Nathan Jones, who had no impact whatsoever until about 15 minutes into the second quarter, he just launched himself into the game. Max Gawn started getting clearances and tap-outs to advantage. Nathan Jones kicked 2 goals in a minute, and they were utterly dominant from that point. Yeah, the third quarter was quite depressing to watch. Paul
Not only were
Roos.
they dominant,
Not
only were they dominant, but we lowered our intensity, something shocking.
Our standard hit rock bottom. I mean, it was probably as bad as a quarter as I've seen us play for quite some time. And unfortunately, we were kind of saying that fairly regularly last year, and we've said that a couple of times this year already, but I think the numbers don't lie. 11 less disposals, 8 less clearances. We had 1 less centre clearance, and this is where the numbers really go crazy. 7 less inside 50s, 24 less contested possessions. We were destroyed in the midfield battle. And to really point home just how much Sinclair struggled, 40 less hitouts up to 3/4 time. That is phenomenal.
Yep. One of the amazing stats there is that we're only down by 1 centre clearance despite losing by 40 hitouts.
Exactly.
So only 1 centre clearance. So it wasn't that we were getting destroyed in the centre either. We were getting destroyed everywhere.
I don't know if you recall from the broadcast, but there was an amazing stat that was read out at halftime. Max Gawn had set a new halftime record for hitouts. He had 33 at halftime. Okay, that's like when Brodie Grundy, I think, got like 56 against Sinclair last year, and Max Gawn got about 54 or something against Sinclair last year. He eclipsed those numbers. So the third quarter was just torturous to watch, Josh.
It was shocking. It was a horrible quarter of football. The last half of the third quarter was just dreadful, and we never pegged it back after that.
How did we go in the last quarter, or the last half in general? What did you think?
Garbage. In a word, disappointing, disheartening. I think the words I'm after, well, to use Horse's words, we lacked intensity. and which is a gross understatement.
Well, he said that 3 out of 4 weeks. Intensity and hardness,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
right.
utterly disappointing. But do you have any stats for us, Josh, about our second half performance? Because I don't want to read them out.
I do, actually. Well, thankfully you sent them to me.
I'm looking at them, and I don't want to read them.
So second half, so we scored 3 goals 2 to 7 goals 6. We were negative 23 disposals, negative 19 inside 50s, negative 20 hit-outs,
Wow.
negative 14 clearances, negative 3 centre clearances, negative 31 contested possessions, and negative 32 ground ball gets.
And that
But
just
we had 4 more marks inside 50.
that negative 32 ground ball gets is absolutely phenomenal. The thing is, it's as we got smashed in that category for pretty much the whole game, I would say. For at least 2.5 to 3 quarters, they really dominated us in that particular category, the ground ball gets. But it's so much like the Adelaide game. They had 33 more ground ball gets, or somewhere around about that, and that's how they won that match. And they won it by similar-ish margin, not a big margin, but, 2-3 goals. It's just so utterly disappointing that 2 weeks on, the exact same thing happens. We just switch off. Third quarter is like it used to be our Achilles heel, and now it's just come back as like the anchor that's dragging us underneath. It is, and it's a travesty that sort of last half, that third quarter.
Yep, it was utterly dreadful, and to see the coach and the captain after the game again talk about just lack of intensity around the ball as being one of the prime issues is just really disheartening. It's, I talk about Bloods culture and Swans football and all those sort of cliches that we've trotted out since 2005, I guess. You'd have to wonder where that will has gone, because it's been missing the last couple of years, and it's going missing more often than it used to.
It is. There was an interesting stat from the last week's podcast that was brought up, which was Sydney was the worst team, or the second worst team for conceding scores from centre clearances. Now, we dominated the first half, destroyed them in centre clearances, and they destroyed us in the second half of centre clearances, and they were getting majority of their scores. I think they kicked about 4 goals from centre clearances from about midway through the second quarter onwards. So they were able to just get it out. I know Max Gawn at one point was just hitting it out, and Brayshaw and Jones and a few of the other ones are just running onto it in space and just delivering it along. Wiedemann got one. There was a couple more that got him as well. I know McDonald got one as well. So it was quite phenomenal just how efficient they were in that sort of last 2.5 quarters for that. But there is something, I think, like, as fans would know, we are trying to keep a positive spin, a positive outlook on how the side performs. It's a bit hard when the team performs so poorly. You blame the players, you blame the coach, you blame everyone, and you try and look for the solution, or at least the scapegoat in this situation. But I think you wrote a really good piece on the blog yesterday, Josh, where you went through the things that are affecting the performance of the squad. Can you just give us a brief rundown? And for everyone who listens to the podcast, go to the blog. It is on the front page. It is currently the first article there. It is a great read. Make sure you read it. But Josh, give us a quick overview of what you think is actually affecting the squad at the moment.
Well, I guess in a nutshell, what I was writing about is you're looking at the demographics that make up our playing group. So we sort of talk about there's the group of senior experienced players who are slowing down, getting towards the end of their careers, and that's just a fact. That's what happens. And then sort of the lack of middle ground we've got in that sort of 24 to 28-year-old playing group with 150 games under the belt. It's actually really narrow, and Harry Cunningham's one of the few we've actually got in that group at the moment.
Well, on that,
and then
Cunningham, Lloyd, and Reid are around about that 110 mark. And then the next player is Luke Parker on about 180, 190 games.
Yeah, and then we sort of looked at most of what it was about, though, was the bottom 9 out of that team, as far as fantasy rankings go, of that team from the weekend. And the bottom 9, if you looked at who made up the bottom part of our team, and generally does make up the bottom of our team on a weekly basis, we're looking at either some really, really inexperienced kids or guys who've barely played over the last 12 months. So our bottom 3 players were all 18-year-old kids. One of them was a debutant. Then there was Mills, who didn't play at all last year and is still looking rusty. Reid was in the same group. I can't remember who the other names in there were, but go and read the article. The article will spell it all out. So there was not just that, but then there was the wholesale changes we've made to the coaching ranks over the last 2 or 3 seasons as well. So we've lost, Josh Franku, Stewie Dew,
Steve Talbot, the Rock Whisperer as well.
Steve Talbot, yeah, that's right. Reece Shaw, who, while he wasn't on the senior coaching list for long, had a rather large impact for a few games last year as well, which includes the game against North where Ali kicked the winning goal.
Yep.
That sort of thing. So it's not just about players and player demographic, it's about changes to our coaching structure and the relative inexperience across both groups. And then there's the whole situation about facilities and, the SCG overuse and not being able to train on the SCG as often. And the oval next door to the SCG, I believe, where we would normally train when the SCG is not available, is having a light rail terminal built on it at the moment, so it's not available either. So there's some real issues around. There's a lot more complex issues than just the coach is bad. And so basically what I was getting at to the end of it was that it's not useful just to scream, sack the coach, because the issues are likely far more complicated than just one person at the top of the food chain. So, and I made a brief comparison to Richmond and Collingwood, where, Damien Hardwick was going to get sacked 3 years ago, and then 6 months later he became a premiership winning coach, and Nathan Buckley took his team to within 2 kicks of winning a flag as well. So, and that was after reviews of their football departments. Now, I wasn't arguing for a review of the football department. I was just trying to say that it's not always just about personnel. It can also be about the structures and the facilities and the environment which that they work within. So, I'm not a Longmire hater. I'm not on the bandwagon to sack him at all. But go and read it. It's far more in depth than I'm able to describe.
Absolutely, it's a great read. I don't want to delve too much into this, so I'll just say my bit and we'll move on. But we are, if you look at it from a business point of view, from an off-field point of view, apart from some members who have actually got a lot of AFL experience or a lot of industry experience, we are quite inexperienced. Our CEO, Tom Harley, retired less than 10 years ago, pretty much came to Sydney straight out of his media commitments, only like 3 or 4 years ago. So this is literally his, outside of football playing as a player, this is his only experience with a club in a management capacity or an administrative capacity, and he's now the CEO of the club. You've got Gardner as well, limited experience. Coaches are very inexperienced. Brett Kirk and John Longmire obviously are quite experienced. Then you've got Blakey's father, which is very experienced, but his sort of involvement is not as much as Kirk's and Longmire's and Johnson's and Cox's in the day-to-day running. So there's a lot of things off the field that are affecting the performance. But I think that's enough on that topic. I want to get straight into our best on. So Josh, we did our 5-1 on the weekend, and they're a little bit different to what people have suggested on social media as their 5-1 for the fans ratings and also the player ratings. So I'll go straight into the Swans Blog's Player of the Year round 4 votes. So 1 vote went to Luke Parker, who was probably one of the better players out of a pretty faltering senior lineup. 2 went to Isaac Heaney, who was enormous in the first half, but copped a really big hit to his hip and was quite limited after that. 3 went to Oliver Florent, who combined with Heaney in the first half for 31 disposals and 7 clearances. They were both amazing in that first sort of quarter and a half to 2 quarters. Aaliyah, who was immense throughout. He was the only reason we only lost by 22 points. And Harry Cunningham got the 5 votes for a quietly achieving but really important game. And yeah, I was impressed. You saw him do a lot of things, but his game was invaluable for us. And to be honest, if other players pulled their finger out, I think we would have done a lot better. Yeah,
Harry really is one of the most underrated linkmen in the game at the moment. And I thought he was in patches last year as well, going back to his ankle injury, which probably robbed him of his breakout season. But I've just got a couple of numbers here for Harry Cunningham for this week. 25 disposals, 10 tackles, and 8 rebound 50s, and he went at 76%, and that was by hand and by foot, so
that
he
10
had a good
tackles
game.
Is amazing. That's an amazing figure, 10 tackles. And how many metres gained did he have? I think it was over 500?
520 something, I think.
And 10 tackles. That is ridiculous. So it just goes to show how hard he worked defensively, and he had a bunch of rebound 50s and inside 50s as well.
Yep, I rate him. I wish more people did.
So we did get some fans' Player of the Year ratings. They are still open until Tuesday, so make sure you get in, do your ratings. We do have quite a mixed sort of bag here. We've got probably Heaney. Depending on the votes we've got now, we haven't got too many. I think people are quite frustrated about it, but it looks like Heaney might take the 5. We have Florent, who might take the 4. Cunningham, who might take the 3. Aaliyah, who might take the 2. And Rampy will probably take the 1 vote. So make sure you get your votes in. We still have plenty of time for it. So get in there, do them. Now, we introduced the fans' player ratings a couple of weeks ago, and we've had some fantastic involvement from that. We gave Cunningham 8.5, and the fans agreed. They gave him an 8. So, Josh, I know you wanted to bring up some of the discrepancies between our ratings and the fans' ratings. Which one sort of did you see the most discrepancy with?
It might have been Hewitt, actually. I think we gave him a 1 and the fans gave him a 4. Is that right?
So we gave him 1,
now? Yep.
And the fans gave him a 3.4. So here's another one.
It's come down a bit.
It has come down a bit, but here's another one. I gave Franklin an 8. I thought his game was good, but I watched it a bit afterwards, and I kind of regretted giving him an 8. I think I would have given him about a 6.5 afterwards. And the fans, they've let us know. They gave him a 5.7.
Yes.
So I don't blame them for that. I understand that completely. That's one that I think the fans have given us a little bit of an adjustment over. But most of the ratings match up. So look, we gave Justin McInerney a 3. I think I'm going to talk about him briefly in a minute. Fans gave him a 3.5. We also gave, I'm just trying to find the player, Nick Blakey got a 3. Callum Sinclair a 2. They agreed with that. And they agreed with the earlier rating. We gave him an 8.5, and the fans gave him an 8. So it's a toss-up for either player, really. So we have our best. Obviously, the best on was Cunningham, Heaney, Florent, Lear, and Parker. Those combination of 5 players. But yeah, the Justin McInerney situation. And that's going to lead us into our good, the bad, and the ugly. Josh, this is our new segment. So we each give our good, our bad, and our ugly from the weekend. I'm going to kick things off. The good, Ali's spoil. That was a masterpiece in defence. It was the highlight of the game from both sides. It was amazing. And he managed to do it without front-on contact, spoil the ball, perfect spoil. Couldn't have asked for anything better, Josh.
Nah, I rated that as well. It was a very good moment. And you're right. He's probably the difference between us losing by 22 points and us losing by 50 points. His defensive work didn't die off as, the defensive work in the rest of the ground died off.
No, it was really impressive.
He's still very underrated. He's still very underrated for my mind.
All right, Josh, give us your good and then give us your bad.
Ollie Florent is my good.
He was great.
Young Ollie has been a little bit down on form the last 3 weeks, but once again, little Ollie Florent has given us a glimpse at what he will become, and his first half especially was quite magnificent for the young bloke.
It was sparkling good, like a little diamond in the rough.
The bad. I don't think I'll quite get hate mail for this, but Sammy Reid's hands.
Teflon. Mate, he's been handling it like a bar of soap.
Yep, well, it wasn't quite an almost game for him, but certainly the week before was an almost game. He almost takes the mark. He almost kicks the goal. He dropped a few sodas in that second half that really should have resulted in shots on goal. But
he sprayed one on the full 2 when another one dropped short and he kicked 1 point. It was not a good game from Reid.
Nope. But he had mates.
Yep, he had mates, yeah. And that leads into my bad. My bad is George Hewitt's form. So we've talked about it. I'd say nearly ad nauseum, but finished top 5 in the Bob Skilton medal, and now we don't even know what he's doing. We don't know what his position is or why he's out there. So look, his form is a massive concern. Our player ratings, I think we've given him 3 over the last 2 matches combined, like total 3. And overall, I think he's averaging about 3 for the season. He's been really, really poor. Unfortunately, this leads into my ugly, and this is why I wanted to talk about Justin McInerney. It's not about him or the way he played. He laid 2 massive tackles, which were really impressive. He had 2 handball receives, and this is what really pissed me off about the match. The only time that players would use him was as an out when it was a hospital hand pass. 2 of the handball receives he got basically decapitated within half a second. And it just, so frustrating. And he was on the wing calling it in open space, no one around him. And what'd they do? Just bomb it long into the forward line. And it just rebounded up the other end and they scored goals. It was.
Yeah, I remember sitting there screaming at the TV that McInerney's open on the wing and he's waving his hands around.
Didn't use him.
Absolutely nothing.
Did not use him. And he showed a lot in the JLT. He showed a lot in practice games. He was very impressive last week in the NIFL. He absolutely destroyed his opponents in the first quarter in the NIFL last week. And I remember watching it going, get this kid in. He's going to offer us a lot. And they just didn't use him at all. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable.
It's very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Joshua, you're ugly.
My ugly. I actually got wound up about this when we were talking about it offline, and that is the ruck situation in Sydney at the moment.
It's insane.
It is. We've known. So, I mean, Sinkers, this isn't a slide on Sinkers, because Sinkers busted his guts, and I'm pretty sure he had a corky, and he was always going to get demolished by Gawn anyway, because that's what Max Gawn does.
He's
but we've known for a
208
year
centimetres. He's given away 8 centimetres on Gawn alone.
Oh, he's a mountain. And once he got his... I'm still assuming he had a corky. He didn't have much of a jump left in him anyway. But we've known for a year that something like 666 was coming, and having... potentially needing 2 ruckmen in the game was going to be a thing. And we also knew that Sam Naismith was probably not going to be ready, at least early on in the season.
And now we
still don't have another ruckman on the list other than Darcy Cameron. And there's some questions about whether Darcy Cameron would be fit enough. I think we should have just brought him in and just played him up against Gawn and, put Sinkers down forward and then put Sinkers up against Bruce would have been better for us.
Yep, agreed.
But,
even if we concede the ruck.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The ruck situation in Sydney's been a mess for 18 months now. And I finally came home to roost the other night, and I held off for a long time going, this situation stinks, because we always manage to get through, and Sinkers has done some magnificent work for us. But this week, no, it sucks. So our ruck situation is ugly.
I think we started taking the Richmond approach back in 2017 when we had Fox and Parker and Dawson and I can't remember who else was pinching in the ruck. Towers. Towers was actually taking like 40% of the ruck at some point and helping out Sinclair.
He actually had some good games.
He had some good games.
He actually did all right. And even to a less extent, Gary Rowan, like when those times where we tried Gary Rowan in the ruck, he did okay, and it brought him into the game. And I actually thought we finally found a way to use Gary Rowan's talents, and then we got rid of him just as we found something he was actually good at.
And then we go back to playing Sinclair 85% in ruck, and he's dead at halftime. So it's unbelievable.
Really disheartening.
It is. Look, enough on that. I just want to really briefly cover the Niafel. James Rowbottom, he has to come in. So the changes for this week have to be Darcy Cameron and James Rowbottom in. There is no choice. I suspect McInerney's going to come back out. No fault of his own. But Rowbottom and Cameron, they have to come in. Cameron got some kudos for this performance. I didn't think it was that good. We just need a ruckman. So even if he spuds it up a bit, doesn't matter. He has to come in and help out Sinclair. But the big one was Rowbottom, who was dominant. He was absolutely fantastic. Clark needs some more time.
There's no reason that Darcy Cameron couldn't give a solid effort against Nankervis.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we could run Sinkers as a marking forward, and that would free up Yohines or someone of that kind who's been playing more as a forward to come further down the field.
Well, because Reed's not marking the ball, Franklin's not really marking the ball, and he's lost a bit of distance and speed, so we need some help. And if they're going to keep bombing it, there's no point bombing it if no one's there to mark it. But
the other thing with Reed too is that I don't like the idea of running Reed as a chop out in the ruck, because every time we've done that in the past, Reed gets injured.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. Look, enough on that. We want to try and move on to some of our social stuff.
Up here today.
Listen to the 40-minute podcast from yesterday, from Saturday rather, where we kind of were a bit fired up as well. But we got a couple of comments from our listeners on social media. So Ash from Facebook, he said, between our good first halves and rubbish second halves and the rules and umpiring this season and Buddy getting murdered without frees every game, it's a hard slog watching the games at the moment, but we shall persist, hopefully prevail. Yes, we are persisting.
Good work, Ash.
Good work, Ash. We love that sort of comment. And the fans, they are hurting. It is difficult to watch us play at times. We have discussed this ad nauseum, so we're not going to go into it. But Steve from Twitter said, how did it go south so quickly? I guess there were some signs last year, but the teams we are losing to this year don't seem that good either. Time to play the kids. And that's something we talked about on Saturday as well, is that I think if we lose the next 2 games, it's pretty much play the kids time and just give them as much experience as they can. Because some of the players that we've got in the senior team at the moment, they do not deserve to be there and they haven't earned their spot. Or at least if they have
Yeah.
previously, their form is so bad, they need to go back to the Niaffle and get form.
I think Steve, that after 2016, because, rightly or wrongly, we didn't get that flag, and depending on which way you swing as to why we lost that game, they probably felt they needed to keep that list together and that they were going to have a fair tilt the year after, and we didn't because we had that 06 start. So we probably didn't develop some of the kids as much as we should have in the seniors because we tried to keep that list together. And I mean, that's just a guess. It may have backfired us on it a little bit, but you're right.
Yeah.
It's time to start getting these young punks into seniors.
So before we close off the show, I just want to raise one point, or just as a comment. So we'll just move on after that. But Franklin has been getting a lot of criticism lately. Now, I can understand that because the list management side has been compromised based on his recruitment and then subsequent trade bans and Kurt Tippett's injuries, basically destroying his career. So essentially the rumour was by the end of 2016, he already was at a point where he couldn't really run, and he had ankle surgery, and then 2017 he destroyed his ankle, had surgery again in the off season, and the reason why he retired was he wanted to walk. So his ankle was literally that bad that if he continued to play, he would need constant reconstructions and surgeries and stuff like that. That's how messed up his ankle was. So Franklin's come in for a lot of criticism. He's copping it from all angles at the moment. He was described as selfish, and to be honest, he probably was a bit selfish, but at the same time, I think he wanted to just pick the team up, put them on his shoulders and go, I got this, I can do it for us, and drag them over the line. I think one of the things that people might forget is his contract and the sort of changes in the sort of the CBA, the agreement that the broadcasters reached with the AFL and the amount of money they put into it. So the cap hasn't gone up as much as the Swans expected it to. They were expecting it to go anywhere up to 30%. It hasn't gone up anywhere near as much as that. The situation is the next 2 years, we're talking 20 and 21, he's on $1.5 million a year. And this year he's already on, I think, 1.3 million. So in the last year, he's on, I think, 1.1 or 1.2 million. So this season, up until the end of his current contract, 2022, is his most expensive years where he's earning, I think, 5 or 6 of his $10 million. That's how much money he's earning. It is an insane amount of money. And we're stuck with it. We can't get rid of it. And people are saying, trade him. But no one's going to take him, not for that money. And we still have to somehow come up with a solution, if we do trade him, to give him that money. We're already stuck with Kurt Tippett's $1 million a year salary. Like, what the hell? It's crazy.
At least Tippett's going to be off the books.
Yeah.
After this year, there'll be no more money outstanding. And
exactly.
We'll be finally delisted officially. I think with the Franklin thing that I think you got to have a broader look at it though. So we cut that deal with the idea that we were in a premiership window, and let's face it, we made 2 grand finals and didn't show up for one, and then arguably got dudded in the other. So it's not like we didn't have a chance to win another flag with Franklin in the team. And then there's the whole financial benefit to the club of having him as the marquee player, and he's without question made millions upon millions for the Swans as an organisation. But as far as his form goes this year, I think people are forgetting he had groin surgery in the off-season, had no pre-season, and he's literally being played back into form and fitness in the senior team.
He trained for 2 weeks before the first game. That was it. That was his pre-season, 2 weeks. Last year, he trained for 20 minutes after his heel injury, and even before then, he only trained for a couple of weeks because he had surgery the previous year. So, it's. I know he comes in for criticism. I think a lot of it's unwarranted. He is a genuine superstar.
Absolutely agree.
And he's going to go down as one of the best players of all time in AFL. I'm not saying lay off him.
Unfortunately, they can double and triple team him. For some reason, we still can't find an open target now, forward 50.
It's because our ruck situation sucks and we can't get any forwards. But anyway, I think we're going to leave it at that, Josh. We don't want to dwell on that anymore.
Nope. Happy faces.
Happy faces, yes. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been wonderful having you on as usual.
Pleasure to be. Always is.
And you also know, everyone, that we are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram with the tag The Swans Blog, and you can get in contact with us during the week with the hashtags SwansCast and SwansCast Extra. Now, we'll be back on Thursday to record our SwansCast Extra after the teams are released, and praying for a better show against Richmond. Until next time, go Swans.
Go Swannies.